Most people wait for a big moment to change their lives. They wait for a breakthrough, a crisis, a sign that says, now it's time. But real change almost never works that way. Most lives don't transform overnight. They shift quietly, slowly, through patterns no one notices. Not through dramatic decisions, but through small actions repeated daily. And that's what most people miss. Because the brain doesn't respond to intensity, it responds to repetition. What you do consistently becomes who you are. If change were about motivation, most people would already be living their best life, but they're not. And the reason is uncomfortable. Small habits and the brain. The brain doesn't label actions as big or small. It only tracks frequency. Anything you repeat long enough creates a neural pathway. This includes dopamine, the chemical linked to motivation and reward. That's why habits form quietly, without permission. And that's also why discipline doesn't need force, it needs structure. Every routine you follow is training your brain, either toward clarity and focus or toward distraction and restlessness. There is no neutral habit. You are always becoming something. The myth of sudden transformation. We love stories of instant change, overnight success, sudden awakening, one decision that fixes everything. But those stories are edited. They remove the boring parts, the repetition, the days where nothing seems to happen. In real life, transformation is quiet. No applause, no dramatic soundtrack, just small choices made again and again and again. Most people don't fail because they lack potential. They fail because they underestimate the power of slow consistency. They quit too early. They mistake boredom for failure. But boredom is often a sign that the habit is finally working. Because when something becomes routine, it no longer feels exciting. It feels normal. And normal is powerful. Most people don't quit because it's hard. They quit because it stops feeling exciting. And no one tells you that boredom is part of becoming better. Why willpower fails. Willpower is treated like a muscle, something you can flex when things get hard. But willpower is unreliable. It depends on sleep, stress, blood sugar, emotional state. That's why relying on willpower alone leads to inconsistency. The strongest people aren't the most motivated, they're the most structured. They don't ask, do I feel like doing this today? They design their life so the right action is the easiest one to take. Discipline isn't heroic, it's mechanical. If willpower actually worked, you wouldn't keep repeating the same patterns. So what does work instead is something most people never think about. Environment shapes behavior. Your environment is always influencing you, more than your intentions, more than your goals. If your phone is within reach, you'll use it. If unhealthy food is visible, you'll eat it. If distractions are easy, focus becomes difficult. This isn't a personal failure, it's human psychology. The brain seeks efficiency. It chooses the path with the least resistance. So instead of trying to fight yourself, adjust the environment. Remove temptations, reduce options, create visual cues. Small changes in environment create massive changes in behavior, without force, without struggle. Pay attention to this. Your life isn't shaped by your biggest decisions, it's shaped by what's always within arm's reach. Screens and dopamine. There's a moment when the day ends and you realize you were busy but not fulfilled. You didn't rest, you didn't build, you consumed. Phone in hand, scrolling without intention, not because you're lazy, but because your brain adapted. Every notification, every short video, every swipe, a small release of dopamine. Over time, the brain expects stimulation, and suddenly, silence feels uncomfortable. Reading feels hard, thinking feels heavy, stillness feels wrong. Not because you're broken, but because your brain was trained that way. There's a reason silence feels uncomfortable now, and it's not because you can't focus, it's because your brain was trained not to. Digital design and control. This didn't happen by accident. Apps are engineered to hold attention. Algorithms are designed to extend engagement. Autoplay exists so you don't stop and ask questions. It's not entirely your fault, but awareness changes responsibility. The moment you understand the system, you regain choice. You don't need to quit technology, you need to stop letting it decide for you. Once you see how the system works, you stop blaming yourself and you start taking control. The cost of constant stimulation. We rarely experience boredom anymore. Every waiting moment is filled. Every silence is interrupted. Music, podcasts, videos, messages. But boredom once served a purpose. It was the space where creativity emerged, where reflection happened, where the mind reorganized itself. When stimulation is constant, the brain never resets. Thoughts become shallow, attention fragments, rest becomes impossible. You're not tired because you do too much, you're tired because your mind never rests. True rest isn't distraction, it's absence of input. Being busy doesn't mean being productive. Sometimes it just means you're distracted in all directions. Attention is a finite resource. Attention is not infinite. Every time you give it away, you have less for what matters. The modern world profits from stealing attention, not once, but continuously. And when attention is fragmented, life feels chaotic. Even simple tasks feel heavy. Regaining attention is not about doing more, it's about protecting less. Less noise, less consumption, less comparison. Focus returns when unnecessary input disappears. Most people think they lack discipline. What they actually lack is clarity. Information overload. One of the greatest illusions of modern life is the belief that more information equals control. We think we need to know everything, but most information never improves decision-making, it only increases anxiety. When you reduce what you consume, clarity returns. What truly matters will always find you. Comparison and identity erosion. Comparison is inevitable, but constant comparison erodes identity. You start measuring your life against someone else's highlight reel. You lose sight of your own direction. Instead of asking, "Am I better than yesterday?" you ask, "Are you behind everyone else?" And that question destroys motivation. Progress is personal. Your pace is valid. Your path doesn't need validation to be meaningful. The moment you stop competing with everyone else, you finally start building your own life. Food and awareness. Most people don't eat consciously. They eat distracted, emotionally, automatically. But food affects more than the body. Nearly 90% of serotonin is produced in the gut. What you eat shapes how you feel. Mindful eating isn't about restriction, it's about presence. And presence is the foundation of self-control. Morning and sleep rhythm. It's not about waking up early for everyone, it's about rhythm. When sleep is inconsistent, focus collapses. Emotions become unstable. Decision-making weakens. A calm morning creates psychological space before the world demands attention. You don't need perfect routines, you need predictable ones. Journaling and self-awareness. Writing isn't about documenting life, it's about understanding it. When emotions stay unprocessed, the brain stays in defense mode. Writing slows the mind. It shifts control from reaction to reflection. You begin to see patterns, and patterns create insight. Insight creates choice. Exercise and discipline. Exercise is not about aesthetics. It's about teaching the mind to continue when discomfort appears. Each time you don't quit, discipline grows. That discipline transfers to work, to choices, to life. Consistency matters more than intensity.
Nothing here is complicated, but almost no one stays consistent long enough to see the results. Small wins and identity. The brain craves completion. Small wins matter. Finishing a page, completing a walk, keeping a promise to yourself. Each small win reinforces identity. I am someone who follows through. Confidence doesn't come from big achievements. It comes from consistency in small commitments.
Identity and systems. Most people wait for motivation, but motivation is unreliable. Systems work. Environment works. Identity works. You don't rise to goals, you fall to habits. Change becomes permanent when habits become identity. If your habits don't change, your future doesn't either. And that's not motivation, that's math. Long-term thinking. Most decisions are made for short-term relief. Comfort now, pleasure now, avoidance now. But long-term thinking asks, what does this choice create if repeated for years? Every habit is a vote for the future version of you. You don't become someone new suddenly. You become what you practice being. Resilience and emotional regulation. Life will always apply pressure. Resilience isn't about avoiding stress, it's about recovering faster. Emotionally regulated people don't suppress emotion, they observe it. They respond instead of reacting. That skill is trained through awareness, not force. You won't notice the change while it's happening, but one day you'll realize you're no longer the same person. Closing. You don't need to change everything. Start with one habit, one adjustment, 1 week. Notice the difference. Because life doesn't change loudly, it changes quietly. In moments no one applauds. And one day you look back and realize the life you wanted was created by what you repeated when no one was watching. It starts today, not with intensity, but with repetition.